What up, nerds? This is Clay Cooper from Prep Expert. I've got a perfect score on the SAT and on the ACT. And today I'm going to talk with you about how you can raise your ACT score by 4 points. So the key to raising your ACT score significantly is to develop mastery of new areas of the test. To develop mastery in areas of the test that you do not currently have mastered. You could take an ACT and get lucky and raise your score that way. Sometimes people do, but don't be fooled. If you want to have a realistic expectation of actually raising your ACT score significantly, if you're interested in relying on something other than luck to raise your ACT score, that's going to require you to develop new mastery. In other words, the topics that are tested on the ACT are really consistent, right? They don't change a lot from test to test. In fact, they don't change at all from test to test. The actual questions themselves change, but the topics that underlie them don't. So, you know what topics are going to be tested on the ACT. If you want to raise your score, just develop new mastery. Master new topics from that list, and your score will go up. How do you go about developing mastery? Well, the first step is to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. The way to do that is to take a realistic practice test. ACT Inc., the company that makes the ACT, publishes old practice tests that you can find and take to get a picture of where you are on the test, what you're good at and what you're not good at. Now, don't get hung up on where your score is on this practice test. That's not really the point. The point is to figure out what your weakest areas are so that you can work on them. So you want to take that practice test realistically. Sit down and mimic the actual conditions of taking the ACT as closely as you can. The more closely you mimic those test conditions, the more useful the data you get from that practice test will be. Once you've taken that practice test, you'll get a score, and more specifically, you'll find out what you're good at and what you're not good at, both among the sections and within the sections. In other words, you'll figure out what sections you're strongest on and which sections you're weakest on, but within each section, you'll also be able to spot patterns in the types of questions you get right and the types of questions you get wrong. Those patterns are what we're looking for. They will reveal to you what your weakest areas are. And if you're trying to get better, your weakest areas are what you've got to focus on. That advice is something that I have a hard time getting my students to accept. I think they believe me most of the time, but they don't want to put it into practice. The knowledge that if you're trying to get better at the test, you're going to have to work on things that you're not very good at. So most of my students have a particular subject or subjects that they like the most. Some people like math, some people like reading, some people like English, you name it. Everybody has their favorite section, it seems, right? The flip side of that, though, is that just about everybody has a least favorite section as well. Unfortunately, if you want to get better at the test, you're probably going to have to focus much more on your weak areas, the sections that you don't like, than you do on the sections that you do like, your comparatively strong areas. So let's go ahead and wrap our minds around that now. If you want to raise your ACT score significantly, you're going to have to focus on the areas in which you are weakest. I know it'll be unpleasant. I know it is not something that you'll look forward to. It'll make it more difficult. But if you're serious about raising your score, you're going to have to do that. Once I know which areas to focus on, once I'm aware of what my weakest areas are, how do I develop that new mastery? Well, the key is to practice with expert guidance. If I want to develop new mastery, I can't expect to just bootstrap myself into understanding it. In other words, if I've always struggled with punctuation questions, I shouldn't expect just to magically get better at them, even by practicing, if the only thing that I'm doing is practicing them the way that I've always attempted them. I need new information, right? If I want new results, I've got to try new things. And the way I try new things in my practice is to get new information, get expert guidance on what I'm not good at so that I can approach it in a new way. So seek out that expert guidance in test prep books, test prep classes, with a tutor if you're able to do that. Any of these resources are great for helping you raise your score. For instance, Prep Expert students in our classes and Prep Expert tutoring students have at their disposal an expert, someone who scored in the 99th percentile of the test. That expert is able to guide them in their weakest areas, to give them new guidance, new information, new tips and strategies strategies that'll help them develop new skills and master these new areas. Again, if you want to develop mastery in new areas, you're probably going to need expert guidance. You can't expect just to brain your way through it. Now, that expert guidance is also available just on the internet at large. So even if tutoring or classes are not an option for you, that doesn't mean that you can't get better at the test. There are other resources out there that can help you find that new information, and you can get expert guidance to improve your score. It's also important that once you get this new information, right, once you get the expert guidance in the areas in which you're weak, and once you've practiced it, you practiced applying that expert guidance to get better on those questions or in that section, it's important that you keep testing. Ideally, what will happen is as you study, your weakest area will constantly change because you should be constantly addressing your weakest area. So to continue the example from earlier, let's say that I've always been bad at punctuation questions. Well, I'm going to seek out guidance on punctuation questions and try to get better at them. If I'm successful, then they will pretty soon stop being my weakest area, in which case I need to start working on something else, right? I've gotten better at punctuation. Now I'll turn my attention to my next weakest area. I need to seek out guidance on this new weakest area and work on it. But the only way I can know what my new weakest area is to continue testing throughout the preparation process. So it's really important that I don't just test once, I don't just take one practice test, but actually that I take several, and that it's an ongoing process of continuously taking practice tests throughout my preparation. As long as I test, work on my weakest areas, test again, work on my weakest areas, test again, and so forth. If I keep that process going, if I repeat that cycle, I can definitely expect my score to increase. So my final tip for how to raise your ACT score by 4 points is also my simplest one. It essentially is this: you get what you give in ACT prep. In other words, hard work equals points. I have a hard time getting my students to accept this as well. Again, I think they believe me, they just don't necessarily want to put this into practice. But like just about anything in life, on the ACT, if you're trying to get better, if you're trying to get what you want, you're gonna have to work really hard. You get what you give in test prep. The students who work the hardest see the biggest score improvements. The students who don't work very hard can't expect to see as big score improvements. Now, it's true that there are some weirdos out there who are just really naturally good at standardized tests, but it's safe to say that if you're taking a test prep class or if you're watching this video, then you have room for improvement, right? Otherwise, why would you be here? That's great. Everybody does, right? I'm glad that we're on the same page about that. So now that we have room for improvement, let's understand that the only way to realistically expect that we will improve is to work really hard. Here at Prep Expert, we have years and years worth of data from tens of thousands of students proving that the students who do the most work see the biggest score improvements. That's the bottom line. Students who don't do the work, their score doesn't improve very much. Students who do the work, their scores improve a lot. So if you want to be a student whose score improves a lot, let's go ahead and accept right now. It's going to take a lot of work. You can do it. You can absolutely do it. I have hundreds of kids a year who do it, and you can be one of them. But just accept, you're going to have to work really hard to raise your ACT score. That's all I've got for you today about how to raise your ACT score by 4 points. Please don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful. You can also subscribe to Prep Expert's YouTube channel for other videos just like this one. In fact, we'd love it if you'd leave us a comment below this video and tell us what you'd like to hear about in our next video. What do you want advice on from a 2-time perfect scorer? Leave us a comment and we might feature the topic you suggest in our next video. There's also a coupon code in the description below this video that will entitle you to exclusive discounts on all of our products on our website, prepexpert.com. You can sign up for a course with myself or one of our other instructors, or you can sign up for tutoring if you'd prefer that. So until next time, keep working hard.